Hey, IT changemakers, and welcome to The Deck Show with Tom McGraw. Let's get into it.
Today's guest, everybody, one of our favorite returning guests, and I have to say, often contributes some of our best performing episodes of the year. We usually get him on once or twice a year to give us the lowdown on the state of the industry, if you will, the state of the DEX industry. He is Sam Gantner, Chief Product Officer at NextThink. Sam, welcome back to the show. How you doing?
Hey, Tom, I'm doing fantastic. Thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure to be here with you.
Always a pleasure to have you on. And I was about to qualify it because we were doing something a little bit different today, right? Because since you last came on the show, I don't want to trivialize it, but you've become something of a source of LinkedIn AI hot takes, mate. You've been born again as a poster, and I'm loving it, man. How are you finding? What inspired you? Why have you suddenly flared up with all these interesting and engaging opinions online?
Listen, I want to become an influencer. No, I've been experimenting with that a little bit, right? And the reason that drove this is the following. There's two things where I spend a lot of time thinking. One is how do we build great software products, and what is behind some of the art of building great software, right? And two, obviously related to my job at NextThink, is how is IT evolving to become much more strategic for the industry. And what I noticed is that I've been sharing some of my thoughts around those two topics in various forums. For instance, the IT stuff I'm sharing at NextThink events, Master of Experience, the main experience events, talks with customers, CIOs. And then the more work-related, how to craft the software, it's more around conferences. I've been a couple of times at the PFL or one-on-ones with other people in the industry. And I realized that sometimes some of this content can be relevant for people, right? And so I thought, is there a way for me to spread this a little bit broader and maybe make sure that perhaps someone out there can take advantage of that? And so I've been trying to experiment with LinkedIn. And I must say, it's kind of fun, right? It seems to be working. So, it's not a lot of effort because those are things that I know already. And it's fun to do it.
Your posting's not getting in the way of your day job, is what you're assuring.
No, for sure.
Not yet. Not yet. It's been known to happen.
It's been known to happen, but I'm trying to keep a lot of control on that. A couple of posts, I must admit, have been more of a rant. I did one on Garmin that went super viral. And, that's sometimes
One
companies...
one on what, Sam? I'm sure I know the post, but say again. You did one on what?
A Garmin one, the Garmin smartwatch.
I missed that one.
Oh, you missed that one?
Yeah,
No, it's the one that's been...
What was the rant about? Go.
Well, their choice of colors for one of the charts that is completely unreadable. No sane person on the planet is able to understand the chart. And it's just a crazy product decision, right? So at the same time, it was something that was bothering me as a user, but also as a professional building software. It's like, why would you make such a bad choice, right? And I had to share it with the planet.
Nice. Well, I'm gonna admit something, right? I think from what I'd be able to read from your posts is, and it stands to reason, right, that you don't show any undue loyalty to a certain platform, right? Like, why should you? But I'm like the opposite. So just to illustrate this, I have had Spotify since I think the year it came out or the first couple. I was like, I love this product so much, and I've never broken it. And I definitely, even when like Apple was all the range with Apple Music, it was a bit cheaper. There was records on it that you couldn't get on Spotify. I was like, no, these guys delivered me this product, I feel attached to it. But I think you make a very good argument that this would be very foolhardy when it comes to LLMs and when it comes to AI. And we're going to get into a little detail about why that is. But first of all, give us the overview of what your AI stack looks like, personally and or professionally, I guess,
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I've been experimenting with various solutions, and towards the end of the year, I decided that I would try one AI each month, and go through all of them just to see a little bit the variety. And so I used to be very focused on OpenAI. I spent some time with Gemini, which was actually great, but I really didn't like their privacy policy. So I moved away. And next in line for me was Claude. And the problem is that it just became too good for me to stop and go to the next one.
Right.
So I kind of stopped at Claude and gotten deeper and deeper on Claude. And but there's something that is happening now with LLMs that is changing the game quite a bit, which they're adding memory. And so memory is making them way stickier than in the past, because now they really start to understand you, they remember your past conversations, and so the price, the cost of switching to a different model or to a different provider at least, is becoming much, much more expensive, right? So I think we're going to see people starting to stick a little bit more into some of the things that they're doing. And then on the coding front, I went 100% on Claude Code. Opus is just ridiculous. And it's been so exciting for me because, I stopped coding years ago because simply, the level of contribution that a single person was able to bring was too small. I couldn't make progress fast enough. I didn't have enough hours in the day to make something meaningful. And now with Claude Code, in a few hours, you can just build something end to end. And it's just incredible, this sentiment of being able to once again produce working software. It's personally, it's just amazing.
I think that's actually, in all fairness, that's one of the nice things about your account is you're not just offering hot takes and rants. You are showing like personal innovation with coding and such like, which I think which is really nice to see. It's really interesting to see on your feed. What's something you've built recently that sort of really changed the way you work?
Look, I've been building a few tools to simplify things, right? I give you a couple of examples. I built a tool to help me understand and better allocate R&D investment. That's one of the key things that you need to understand, right? So how much effort, how much of your available capacity are you putting on different products and projects? And it's not so easy. So I built a tool that really helps me visualize where that spend goes and how to better allocate to really align with the strategic things that we want to do. Or more recently, like every company at the beginning of the year, we do a compensation review to provide salary increases and things like that. And I wrote a tool to help me structure that in a very fair and correct and performance-oriented way, which was absolutely great. But what I realized, Tom, is that at the end of the day, it's not really about the tool. I think it's about how your thinking changes. To understand the real potential of Gen AI and how to use it, you need to be very familiar in how it operates. And the best way to become familiar in how it operates is to use it very, very often. This is why I've been advocating that the R&D leaders that are truly able to drive 3x plus, outcomes for their engineering teams are those leaders that went back to coding, right? Using LLMs. This is why the PMs that are building the best agentic products that I've ever seen are those that are using LLMs to prototype. Because fundamentally, they understand how Gen AI works, what are the limits, what are the opportunities, and then they're able to apply that to their job. So I would say this is really the major difference, not really the tool that I built, but how building those tools have helped me understand at a deep level how agents operate.
Put simply, if you're in a leadership position in product development, you're able to run your own prototypes. It's something you're able to experiment at the top level. Is something you couldn't have done with anything like this used 2 years ago, right?
Exactly, 100%. And just use it. Any leader out there, I think, general purpose people just doing HR management are losing their relevance more and more. If you want to be a great leader, no matter what, but especially in R&D, you need to be hands-on again.
That's an interesting point. Okay, so more generally, do we see on the screen before us the two types of AI users? The ones who because I tell you, because it's not obviously my tendency towards extreme product loyalty is only exacerbated when you're in conversation with something day in day out, and you can't help but anthropomorphize them. You start to feel guilty about the idea of turning away from it. But you're gonna end up with two types of users: people who stick with one, and people who approach the whole sort of raft of options as something like a toolkit. And what does that tell us? Do you think those respective approaches, or rather the latter approach, what does that tell us about what AI actually is in terms of a product or something that's much closer to infrastructure itself?
Well, it's kind of interesting, right? When you look at how people are adopting AI, I kind of break them down in three categories. The first category is people that don't get it yet, right? The people who are refusing to get into AI. And it's surprising, even across the people that I know, there's quite a few around, right? Then you get the first type of users, which are those that are really jumped into AI to use them as kind of assistants, sidekicks, and so on and so forth. And then you have those that are really starting to get into the mood of AI, which are starting to delegate some of their work to agents. And back to your question, when is AI a product or infrastructure? It's actually both. And here's the analogy. So in the SaaS world, you had Azure, AWS, Google offering the infrastructure, right? And then a number of companies building software products on top of that infrastructure. That's how we're used to think about that. In the AI world, the infrastructure is the foundational models. So OpenAI, Anthropic, Google are building those models. And then on top of this infrastructure, you build more specialized agents that are your products, right? Now, it just happens that the infrastructure players, so OpenAI, Anthropic, and so on and so forth, are also building agents on top, so are also building products on top of their own foundational models, right? But so in this perspective, it's really both.
How is that influencing your approach to future product design for Nextthing? The reality of that emergent industry.
Yes, we're really following the maturity curve of how AI is going from assisting people to doing work on behalf of people, right? Give you a couple of examples. Look at the Assist. Even the naming of Assist itself. When we started working on Assist back in 2022, the idea was to provide kind of a sidekick that would help IT teams navigate Nextthing and getting value out of Nextthing much quicker with much less effort. Now, over time, that value proposition has completely changed and is been evolving into how do we build autonomous agents to which IT people are able to delegate part of their work. That's a completely different value proposition, right? It's not about how do we let them use Nextthing better, is how do we dramatically shift the amount of manual tasks that they need to do, not only in Nextthing, but globally for their work. And Spark is a similar philosophy, right? Now with Spark, we just launched it like 2 months ago, we're able to replace a lot of that manual service desk work that used to be so slow, by the way, for people experiencing a problem. They want a solution much more quickly, right? And so Spark is able to produce that at levels of quality that are higher than what we were able to do with manual human workflows before. So more broadly, the concept for us for every new product, every new thing that we want to bring into Nextthing is becoming, let's do it AI first, and then we add a user interface only when it's really needed, right? Mm-hmm. But now the whole thinking has become AI agent first.
Right. I missed the opportunity to say friend of the show when you mentioned Assist, because of course it was a prior guest. But you talk a lot in your post about the orchestration of different AI agents, right? And speaking of which, of what you were just saying, you've also got a lot of experience managing human teams. Interested where they're analogous to one another and where the analogy breaks down in your experience.
That's a great question, and I love it. Well, managing agents is much simpler and yet much more complex at the same time. Let me elaborate. Why is it simpler? Well, agents have no personality, no ego, no emotions, no politics. They don't get tired. They don't need time off, right? Yeah. So, by the way, all of the things that make managing humans pleasant and great and fun and interesting.
You get tired.
yeah. I mean, you don't get any of that with agents, right? Yeah. So it's honestly, it's much more boring to manage agents, but simpler from that perspective. You don't have the human emotion, right? And at the end of the day,
Totally.
that's what we like. Anyways, why is it more complex to manage agents? Well, it's more complex because agents are very, very smart, but unbelievably limited when it comes to judgment. Simply put, a human, a reasonable human, knows how to stop and to ask a question, right? Now, agents, they don't do that. If you look at the behavior, when they're wrong, they tend to go down that wrong path deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. And they're not going to stop, right? They're going to try to figure out a way down the wrong path without asking too many questions. And so this is why a lot of the efforts when you want to manage agents is not really in defining the task, which you still need to do fairly precisely, but it's more around how do you set up the guardrails so that they don't go down this path, they don't start to hallucinate all over the place. Also, the other thing is that agents don't really have a lot of common sense, right?
Yeah.
And so you need to spell out everything that they need to do. And it's getting better with memory, right? Because they're starting to learn from some of these things from the past experiences. But today you still need to put a lot of effort on that. So I think that managing agents is less like managing people and much more like designing and architecting systems. And this is why when you look at that from that perspective, people that are really good at managing agents are people that are used to be good or are good at software architecture. And this is why experienced engineers are really great at that, right? At managing agents, because they've been trained and they've been practicing that art of orchestrating systems for a long time.
Speaking of which, let's come back to a question of code a little bit. You wrote, if your developers are still writing code, you've already lost. More generally, what does a bad engineer look like, do you think, in 2026?
Well, as we classified that, things are changing very fast, right? So let me start by introducing what it means to adopt AI for an engineer. And when you look at that, there are three main waves of AI adoption. The first one, and it's kind of over now, is once again where AI was there to assist engineers. And this is really the beginning of Cursor, for instance, where they introduced this concept of tab autocomplete and making that experience amazing, where Cursor is able to help you write some of the code. So that brought some, 10% acceleration, 20% acceleration, but it was useful, but somewhat marginal, right? Then the second wave is where AI starts to write all of the code for engineers. And so here you have the paradigm of Claude Code that was introduced, where you have multiple AI sessions running in parallel, and then you have a human that is coordinating these sessions. They have one tab per session, and they work around the fact that the agent is relatively slow by having multiple of these ones writing code at the same time. And here, by the way, it's getting pretty complex for engineers because to be efficient as that, since the engineer is doing the manual orchestration, it's like playing multiple games of chess at the same time, right? You need to multitask, and that's very, very, very hard to do. And there you could kind of see the skill level of somebody, high skill level, maybe they can manage 5 at the time, lower skill level, they can manage 2 or 3.
Like those great chess players who when the better chess players always line them up. They come down with chess club, they get 5, 6 of you in a row, and they kick you around.
Exactly.
Time. Yeah.
Precisely. And then now you have the third wave that is coming, in which you have fully autonomous agents that can go on for hours and almost build a complete product from scratch, right? And to be honest, that's still mostly used for internal tooling and prototyping rather than production code. But the direction is clear. We're going to head down that way down the line. So what's a bad engineer? I don't know if I can qualify that, but to me, a bad engineer.
Performance review, Sam. You can
No, look, for me, a bad engineer is somebody who has not yet realized that alone they can do the work that used to be done by a team of 5, right? Or either maybe they realize, but they don't want to take accountability for that. because honestly, it's very hard. And what is paradoxical in all of that is that basically AI is bringing humanity back into the equation. We had a long time in which, in software engineering, we stopped thinking about people and we were only focusing on teams, right? The individual kind of lost its importance and everything was about what is the team able to accomplish, which was absolutely great, right? It was the right thing to do, but it was also making it possible somewhat to hide within that context. And now AI is changing that because individuals are coming back at the center of attention, but also they face much more pressure because now if they can deliver, it's much more visible for them. And I think this is one of the reasons why some people are uncomfortable with this new reality, because it's obviously pretty tough if you think about that.
What do you think about like learning code nowadays? Is it like learning handwriting? Is it which to be fair, like my kids still do, right? Like our children still do at school. They write with pens and pencils until they hit 12 years old, and then they never ever look at them again other than signing a document. And I can't make up my mind whether that's a kind of a quirk and should be pushed past, or whether it's a kind of a decent foundation in and of itself. And where would you stand analogously to learning code for engineers? You know, how necessary is that in your view?
Oh, wow, you make me feel obsolete. I'm still taking some of my notes with a pen and a piece of paper.
So me too on occasion, right?
Yeah. But I get your point. Listen, as you say, my kids are still learning how to handwrite, and I believe it matters for engineers. It matters enormously. Not really because of the fact that they're gonna have to write code in the future. They won't, but as a way of thinking.
Yeah.
Right. I was mentioning before, engineers are the best at orchestrating agents because it's like architecting systems. And so the question becomes, how do you become great at architecting systems? What do you need to learn in order to be able to be proficient at that? And coding is the foundation of that because it brings you that ability to think logically, to break down a complex task into much smaller units, right? And that is really what orchestrating is all about. How do you take something that is very big, that you wouldn't be able to solve as a whole, and break it down in different units that you're able to understand? And code is the same, right? You take down a complex program and you start to define, okay, these are the modules that I need into that. And then within modules, these are the classes that I need for that. And then within those classes, those are the functions. And this is really the process that you need for orchestrating agents. So I believe that in the future, if my kids want to get into this space at a certain point, I would definitely recommend for them to learn coding. Now, they won't need to do it to the level of proficiency that we used to teach people 10 years ago, but at least the foundations, I think they can really help shape your way of thinking in a very useful way.
I think in any space, as well as things become more automated, as it were, foundational knowledge will remain really important, almost just like symbolically, that our professionals retain some awareness of even how the technology is functioning, like
Absolutely.
be it a pilot or whatnot. But okay, so this is an interesting question to me. Based upon what you were saying about infrastructure, you're building your own tools, you're not waiting around for products to be delivered to you yourself. Are we heading for a world where the best users outgrow SaaS entirely? And what is the future of SaaS in this emerging ecosystem?
Look, for me, it's kind of unlikely, right? I think a lot of engineers are building their own tools to accelerate things because truth is, by the way, a lot of engineering time never went into writing code. It went into everything that was associated to writing code and to getting code to production, right? And so to go from a vibe coded thing that kind of works to something that is secure, scalable, production grade, that can be maintained, that can be used by others, there is a huge, enormous gap, right? And most people won't spend the effort to close that gap.
That's a fact.
Right? And especially in the large enterprise is even more important, right? Because, what if this person leaves? No, they vibe coded a tool that a bunch of people are using, and then they just leave. What happens?
You need to imagine this happening.
Yeah, it's a mess, right? Or what if they don't secure it and then the data goes everywhere? What about GDPRs and privacy and all of these things? I think it doesn't scale. I believe that the best users will become very proficient in delegating work to AI solutions that are provided by the market. And so at the same time, software companies have the opportunity to build much better products, right? Also, by the way, this comes with a side effect, which is the temptation for software companies to build much more, right? And so you will likely see some of the products out there explode with a huge number of badly thought features. And you mentioned before that I'm okay in naming names. Look at Microsoft Copilot, right? It's kind of terrible, and now there is a lot of pressure on Microsoft to fix things. But it felt like somebody at Microsoft told everybody, put a Copilot icon and Copilot functions everywhere. And people didn't really think about what outcome do we want to let people achieve? How do we make it easier for people to do things? But they just added feature over feature over feature over feature. And that's definitely not what we need to do, right? So I think as software professionals, we need to think about, yeah, right now we can produce so much more, but what still matters the most is what is the problem that we want to solve, and how do we do this in a way that will actually simplify people's lives and not making it more complex.
Another thing I learned about you, Sam, from your posting is you read a lot of sci-fi. You admit to it. You admit to it. No,
I did, yeah.
And I think you even alluded to it, right? Like in some of the chat below the post, which is so much sci-fi now seems a little bit redundant because it wasn't able to kind of concretely anticipate AI. Some of it looks quite quaint and outmoded, even if it's set 1,000 years in the future, So do you feel like, elaborate on that a little bit more? And if you were to write your own sci-fi presently, what kind of future would you imagine?
Look, that's a tricky one. The thing is, sci-fi was never really about predicting the near future, right? Most of it, at least. The thing that made it exciting were things like faster than light travel or contact with alien civilizations. And to that kind of scope, by the way, we're nowhere closer, right? As far as I know, we haven't made any major leaps in breaking relativity.
Disclosure announcements made this year, then, Sam. I think
yeah,
that may be another way that sci-fi is getting a little nearer. But
that could be, by the way, absolutely. Yes. So sci-fi, what it doesn't do is to reflect the speed of AI, right? So if you look at most of the narrative, it's still narrative that is centered around people or aliens, but still, thinking biological beings, because those are the things that matter for us, right? Those are the stories that we want to hear. We want to hear the stories, the struggles, the adventures of people. Mm-hmm. And that brings to me a bigger reflection, which is where are we going to be 1,000 years from now? Look at how much AI has evolved in the past 3 years. It's completely mind-blowing. And so it's a huge question mark for me. I really have no idea where the world is going to be.
What are your go-to AI movies, Sam? Like, what if you had to name one or two, whatever ones for you?
Look, probably one of my favorite books ever that now is a movie is Dune.
Oh, love.
Have you read it?
Yeah. Do you know, I've got to admit, I never read the novels. I love the movies. I've watched them both about half a dozen times.
Yeah, read the novels are even much better.
Everyone tells me, I grew up with so many people who read them. I had so many accounts going back years and years, and everyone always says, "Oh, the first one's amazing, the second one's okay," and then it goes really, really bad really quickly. I hear that so often. But no,
another one that is now a TV show is Foundation by Isaac Asimov. So that's another great one.
When was the last time, off topic a little bit, but when was the last time you watched the first Matrix movie?
Oh, probably 10 years ago. I haven't
Okay.
watched. Actually, maybe I should do that.
You got to rewatch it post, LLMs. You got to post the
yeah.
AI explosion. You've got to rewatch it. It's even more uncannily, eerily prescient. Like
I've not thought about that. Yeah.
the backdrop of the 21st century so far, it gives you chills, and it's still a great movie. But
That's a great idea.
If you haven't rewatched it for a while, I would, and I've got a great question off the back of this for you, Sam, to lead us towards the end of the conversation. You don't strike me as particularly overly sentimental about the past, but if you could preserve 3 things, I'll take any number of things, to be honest with you, from AI-driven disruption, what would they be?
Well, I would try to preserve humans,
Yeah,
to be
keep
quite
us
honest.
around. Hey, okay.
Just one. I give you just one thing. Us. Look. Let's go. AI completely changed everything in 3 years, right? What's going to happen 1,000 years from now? And I think AI will obviously completely redefine society. It will redefine what work means. And today, truth is, a part of the meaning of our lives is around work. Not for everybody, but at least for some of us, right?
Yeah.
And so I think fundamentally AI will redefine the whole concept of why we matter and what our lives matter. And I have absolutely no idea what the answer of that is going to be. So at the same time, is a very exciting future, one I'm embracing, but it's also extremely, extremely scary. And so if you gave me absolute power, I might even decide to stop AI and to kill AI, which is really weird for somebody that is
Butlerian jihad, eh?
Yeah. No, it's
I
crazy.
know enough about the Dune books to know what the Butlerian jihad is. So.
I don't know what that is.
Isn't that in the Dune universe where they ceased AI? They had to turn it off effectively.
Yeah, exactly. No, absolutely. Which is, by the way, it's the premise of some of these books, because otherwise, the narrative wouldn't work. But I wonder, maybe we should just turn it off.
It started here. The revolution started here. But before we let you go, then, Sam, it would be a shame not to do one fulsome next thing plug. What's something your team's building right now that really excites you?
Well, so many things. It's like choosing between your kids. You can't. But recently we put a lot of attention around Spark, right? With the launch that just came, and this unbelievable product. So I will not go in the details of that, because I think it's I said that so many times. But what is coming right now in terms of agents as part of Workspace, so in the broader assist concept, that is unbelievably exciting. And it will really redefine the way of the broader IT ecosystem will operate. Not only the support organization, but how everybody in IT is doing their work. Rather than keep doing things by hand, they're going to be able to use Workspace every time they need to do something, create an agent for that, and then automate that work. So we're putting a lot of emphasis into that part. And I think what we're going to see coming in the product in the next 3 to 6 months will be really changing the game for IT operations more broadly and in general. So I'm really, really excited about that.
Awesome. Sam Gantner, lovely to have you back on. Keep on posting. We're enjoying it, man.
Thank you so much. Cheers.
That's it for this week's Deck Show. We'll be back next week. And if you don't already, be sure to follow the show so you don't miss an episode. Until next time.